In this video, we're going to talk about graduated payment mortgages, which are sometimes abbreviated as GPM. So a graduated payment mortgage is a mortgage in which the payments are going to gradually increase or step up over time. So for example, in the first year of the mortgage, the monthly payment might be $500 a month. Second year, it might be $550. Third year, it might be $600. And then at some point, it typically levels out, and let's say it becomes $650. And then it's just $650 to the ending to the year 30 or whatever the mortgage ends. So let's walk through an example. So let's say that you have a 30-year mortgage and the interest rate is 12%, but here's the catch: it's a GPM because payments are going to increase 7.5% annually for the first 5 years. Now that's the payment. The mortgage payment is going to increase, not the interest rate. So let's take a look at how that would play out. It'll give you a little bit better idea. So in the beginning, you've got a balance of $60,000, right? I'll just call that year zero, right? This is when you get the loan. So what happens is that if you were doing a regular mortgage, that you didn't have this thing of the payments gradually increasing, and you just said 30-year mortgage at 12% interest, the payment that would be required to amortize this would be $617.17. But what they're doing is saying, look, for whatever reason, maybe you're having a hard time qualifying, or your income isn't very high right now, but you expect it to be higher in the next few years, you're going to agree to this graduated payment mortgage, and your payment's actually only going to be $474.83 in the first period, in year one. Right? So every month you're paying this $474.83 instead of paying $617.17. So the issue that creates, though, is you see that your loan balance will actually increase. And you might seem weird, say, hey, this is weird. That's actually called negative amortization, which I talk about in a different video. So negative amortization, mainly it's just your loan balance is increasing, and the reason is that your payment isn't sufficient to cover all the interest that is incurring on your loan each month. For example, so let's take this $60,000 here, right? So if we were to say, okay, so the interest is 12%. So for 1 month for the interest, for month one, you'd take that 0.12, divide it by 12, and then you multiply that by the balance. And the balance in month one is $60,000. So if you get this would be the interest alone would be $600 for month one. So this is month one interest. But you're only paying $474.83. So that means that you are not even covering all the interest that is increased. So what is happening is that interest, that difference between the $600 and the $474.83, gets added to the loan balance. And that's happening every month here. And so this balance is actually growing larger and larger. Whereas if you had paid the $617.17, you would have had $17.17 that first month going toward the principal. But you're not paying down the principal yet because you've got these smaller mortgage payments. Now, you might say, well, why do I want this? Well, the thing is that you're saving. If we look at the difference between $617.17 and the payment you're making, $474.83, you have savings of, what does it come out to? $142.34 savings per month in year one. Now, you're getting a larger loan balance, but you're saying, hey, look, I'm willing to pay more next year. In year two, we'll step up the payment. And then in year 3, year 4, year 5, we'll just keep stepping up the payment, and you're increasing it by 7.5% each year. So the payment is going up and up. And the reason is you're saying, look, at some point in the future, I believe I'm going to be able to pay more. You know, I think my income's going to increase. I just need help in these early years. And so I just want to gradually get up to this point. So ultimately, years 6 through 30, you're paying $681.67. So you're actually paying more. If you had just not had this graduated payment mortgage, again, you would have been paying $617.17 throughout the entire life of the loan. Instead, what happens is you start at $474.83, and by year 6, you get to $681.67, and then you just keep that $681.67 for the remainder of the life of the loan. And so it's a benefit to you if you have trouble with income in the first few years of the loan, but you want to get into that home. You want to qualify for that mortgage. And so the negative amortization, it actually continues for a while here. If you see your balance continues to increase all the way up until you get to that payment of $681.67, then at that point it finally starts declining, right? So you start paying off not only the interest, but so you're covering all the interest at this point and some of the principal. And so then your loan balance starts to decline, and eventually you pay off the mortgage after 30 years, and you bring the balance down to zero. So you might be thinking, hey, this seems like a really kind of convoluted way of structuring a mortgage, and maybe you're worried that, hey, I'm actually increasing the balance in the first few years. Why would anybody want to do this? And so it's important to remember that this lower payment in the early years might be all that somebody can afford. Right? Somebody might say, look, I think I'm going to get raises at my job, or maybe I just had a child and I've got some expenses. Right now, I want to own a home, but all I can afford is this $474.83. But to get me in the home right now, I'll say, hey, look, I'll deal with that negative amortization. We'll take this, and I'll eventually get to a point where I have fewer expenses or more income, and I can pay this $681.67 to be able to pay off the mortgage. So, and it's kind of a nice thing too if you think about it, in terms of you're having a gradual transition where you say, okay, here's $474.83, then the next year it's $510.44. It's not like you just have a huge spike in what your mortgage payment is. It's a gradual increase over time, and it's not something that's subject to the interest rates or something like that. So it's not like if interest rates explode, you're going to have some kind of problem, because this is all fixed, right? Obviously your payment is changing each year, but it's not like an adjustable rate mortgage where the payment is changing because of the interest rates. These are planned changes. You know what they're going to be at the outset of the loan. You know, okay, in year 2 I'm going to pay $510.44, in year 3 I'm going to pay $548.72. The real danger is if you're kind of overly optimistic and you say, you know what, I think I'll have more income or fewer expenses once I start to get further along in the loan, but what if that increased income does not materialize? Or your expenses actually go up, and then you get to a point where, hey, look, I can't afford this larger payment, and I've actually been sitting here the last few years increasing my loan balance rather than decreasing it.